Hello, Jason. How are you?
Hey, Julie, I am good. How about you?
I am well. Are you ready to talk about certifications?
I'm ready, and I'm ready to learn a bit too.
Okay, so in preparation for this podcast recording, I said don't do any research. Did you follow my instructions?
I worked very hard to follow your instructions, yes.
Okay, so what do you know about certifications, specifically the Microsoft certifications?
All right. I know that they are an important element of many professionals' credentials, and they are an important element for some companies in terms of how they rate or qualify or value, I guess you would say, their employees. I also know that Microsoft makes them part of the criteria for partner classification, that they expect partners to have people on staff with certain certifications. And then I think more generally, it can be important for your salary. It can be important for, your ability to find new jobs. So I think overall, I think it seems like it impacts a lot of both partners and individual workers' careers.
That is all fair points and accurate about certifications. We're seeing a lot of saturation on social sites like LinkedIn of people getting badges. So we should talk about those badges as a form of recognition for your knowledge and skills. And then also talk about how certifications should shift into role-based scenarios instead of just product-based scenarios.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that there are, whole YouTube channels, whole blogs that, maybe not whole blogs, but blogs that do focus a lot on passing certifications, passing the tests. And then the other side of it, or the other side of that coin is really what is Microsoft doing in this space? Because this is all coming from sort of, when we talk about certifications, these are all things that Microsoft has put out into the world, right?
Right. And so I will quickly share my opinion on certifications. I have mixed feelings, and I've been very public about my mixed feelings. And this goes back to more than a decade ago when I very publicly announced my failure of certification. But I think that if all I know about you are certifications, they are important. But experience is more important. And that now that we have role-based certifications as opposed to product-based certifications, I think they hold more value. But even if you're not a good test taker, as a professional, you could benefit from the training, even if you're not going to take the certification exam. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the similar concept that you hear with other like standardized testing, for example, where the further away it is from reality, the more it frustrates people and the more it feels like a useless exercise. And the closer it is to actual competency, sort of the more people accept it, I would say.
Right. Yep. And did you even know that was going to be a great segue into talking about the process of making the certifications?
I didn't, but I'm glad to hear it.
So I've been involved in the process, and it is not a black box. And though not everyone can be involved in the process, there are several different layers in this process. So there's obviously internal Microsoft resources. There's some input from the product team. Yes, there's input from marketing perspective of what kind of messaging we want to make sure that it's all kind of aligned together. But there are people who determine it's called a job task analysis, where a group of people get in a room, either virtual or actual room, and discuss what tasks might a person complete if this were their job. So if you are a functional consultant on Power Platform, if you are a sales certified Dynamics expert, and so on, what might you be doing day to day, and how do we prepare you for that with this certification path? So there's a group of people that do that job task analysis, usually 10 or fewer that are working on that as a group. And then it's called an objective domain, which is the consolidated list of categories and topics in an easy to consume way. And that actually has a lot greater input from professionals. And that's a survey that's sent out far and wide to get as many people's opinions on the amount of weight that should be given to any specific topic. And then things continue to branch from there. So you have these people write and evaluate the questions. This group over here is making the course materials to match the objective domain. And very seldom do the group who's writing the questions and the group who's writing the material overlap. And that's by design.
Interesting. So this is all going on. This is bringing in different people sort of during the, I guess you call it the authoring process or the creation process before a certification exam is ever rolled out. These are some of the steps that are being carried out by, I guess, organized by Microsoft, but bringing in outside experts like you and other people with real world experience as well. Yes.
Yeah. And so when I publicly failed that exam, I think it was 2011, I complained about it, the process and the exam and how it didn't reflect reality, as you had mentioned. And so the response I got from some people at Microsoft who were paying attention was, okay, fine, you do it better. So I've been involved ever since. So I got what I asked for, right?
Yeah. And you're certainly not the only person I've heard criticize certifications in one form or another. Maybe not exactly at that time or that exact certification exam, but it seems like an area where people aren't afraid to be critical if they see issues. And I hope that does. It sounds like at least some people at Microsoft do listen for future updates that they make, right?
Absolutely. And in fairly recent memory, we were able to split out the Power Platform components and basically make our own little branch of certifications for Power Platform. That's one way you can informally measure the maturity of a product is there a certification?
Yeah, Power Platform seems like it would be, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, because Power Platform, when you think about mapping it to roles or mapping it to responsibilities of the people who will be taking those exams, it seems like a trickier one to, define the right roles, right? Or the right skills that match a role.
I'm not sure that I agree with that perspective, but I can see how you got there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, please. I mean, maybe I just don't know what those roles are.
So for Power Platform, you will typically have someone who is what we call a functional consultant at this point in time. And that's an industry term. And I think that is the most overworked and underappreciated person who is on a project team, because they have to know so many things. Granted, their day-to-day might always just be building forms and form automation, but that doesn't mean that they're not qualified to also be building out the schema of the data model, for example. And that's all part of the certification exam for functional consultant, is to know all of those pieces. And then when we get into what we call the first party apps, the old school CRM, the sales, customer service, marketing, and so on, those individuals kind of straddle a line between, am I a well-educated user or am I a configurator? And so maybe there's some blurring of the lines there as well.
Okay, I can see that. So there's role-based and there's this process for making the certifications. Can you give any update on sort of what the latest is with certifications? Is there anything that's publicly available that's like imminently going to change, or any direction you see things going there for the future?
Well, I see a continued push on the role-based. I see continued investment on how do we evaluate skills. So there's knowledge and there's skills, right? And so knowledge is what you know, skills is what can you do. And both are important. And as we've seen some evolution of the process of certifications, we've seen that we now understand that you need to know how to find the answer. You may not know the answer, but you need to know how to find it. So now when you take a business application certification exam, right there in your exam experience, you have access to Microsoft Learn. So if you don't have that answer right away at your disposal, you can go find the answer, which is, as an employer, that's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you are the one investing to help the person certify while they're working for you.
Absolutely. And so we've also seen investments in the technology to evaluate the skills. So we've seen these interactive experiences on Learn where, for example, you're given the requirements for building a flow, and then the system will evaluate the flow that you have created. Have you met the criteria to earn this credential?
Oh, that's pretty cool. I hadn't heard
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. And we've been dreaming about such a thing for years, and that it's finally come to fruition. Other technologies have done it for a long time, and seeing the investment here has been really rewarding.
Pretty cool. I wanted to go back to sort of when you asked me what I thought certifications were all about. What do I know about them? What about the value of them? I think I mentioned that I think they're important for professional development, for maybe landing a new job, for for getting raises, maybe. I don't know. Are there other things that are valuable about certifications that I didn't hit, or that you maybe want to clarify?
Um, Microsoft certified trainers have to be certified in something, and we are only permitted to teach official courseware for the courses where we have personally received the certification. So I can't go in front of a classroom and teach official courseware to teach you how to do Azure Synapse. I don't know if there's an exam for that or not, but just as an example, I don't have that expertise. I don't have that credential. So it's another step in the validation process for Microsoft Certified Trainers, MCTs, to make sure they're qualified to be teaching what they are teaching you.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I can't teach unofficial courseware or anything that I want to, but from a official courseware exam prep perspective, I can only publicly teach those things where I have that qualification as well.
To me anyway, one of the upsides of certifications is that it doesn't seem like there's a huge barrier to doing them, even if even if your employer is not picking it up, if you're independent, if you're, I don't know, maybe even still a student, or, just out of high school or just out of a university, and trying to sort of build up your credentials. Is that one way that people use certifications?
I think so. And I think that barriers that we might imagine are different depending on the geography, because for you and I, based in the US, it's quite fortunate that we can kind of casually say, oh, sure, here's $150 or whatever it may be to pay for the certification. Whereas other people, where their economy is much different or they're not employed, that cost may be overwhelming. And so Microsoft runs many different challenges throughout the years, and there's many different programs available where you can participate, for example, in the Cloud Skills Challenge. And at the end of that challenge, you have a voucher to get a certification exam for no cost.
Okay.
And so that doesn't become a barrier.
Yeah, I would think that, yeah, there's certainly barriers. I mean, everywhere for people trying to get educated. That, I guess, in combination with, I mean, the Learn resources really have come along, from what I've heard in recent years, that they are quite a bit better than maybe they were 10 years ago or something.
Well, yes. And I've also publicly been on record that my first certification exam, I didn't know any better, and I use an exam dump for my study. And once I found better resources, and once the certs kind of changed their focus to be more realistic, then that was no longer necessary. But when the exams were a memorization of obscure trivial knowledge, there was really no practical way to prepare. But now that they're based on in-product actions, then just being good at using the product and configuring the product makes you prepared for the certification exam.
Okay, so the experience counts for more now.
Yes, absolutely. And with all of the different Learn modules that are available on Microsoft Learn that offer a badge or recognition, at the end of that course or module, those are continuing to help you build a portfolio of your knowledge and sometimes your skills. A lot of those have hands-on exercises. That's part of what my afternoon is today, is going to test some hands-on exercises that one of the guys here wrote for Microsoft Learn. So I can test that and validate and make sure that it not only works, but teaches the desired lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, going back to something else you mentioned a few minutes ago, when people are developing a lesson, let's say, you're I assume you're creating the lesson in English, the text, the languages. Are there translations, or are there other teams being brought in to create, I don't know, maybe similar lessons in other languages or suited to other locales?
Yes, absolutely. And so a lot of the Learn content is translated into, I believe it's 5 or 6 languages, standard high impact languages that we would expect. And then also, I have some students that are Ukrainian who English is not their first or second or third language, and the built-in browser translation tools do a fabulous job. The translations are missing on things like videos and screen images or things of that nature that are harder to translate, but the words that are able to be translated using those built-in tools is just amazing. They seem to be far greater than they used to be.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I imagine like screenshots would be one of the real headaches, which I know in just software, that's always been a bit of a pain, right? Localizing words on buttons and labels and so forth. So that must still be a similar problem with training materials.
Absolutely. And we've got some tools at our disposal that help reduce some of that friction, but not eliminate.
Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of gotten to the point where I wanted to ask about studying for exams and how you actually prep, how people prep for exams. I know I've seen courses out there. I've seen sort of training, I guess you call them training or prep videos, prep blog posts. So there's a lot of options out there, right? There's free materials from Microsoft, as you've talked about. How do you see that landscape?
Well, there are official courses from Microsoft that some of them are self-directed on Microsoft Learn. Some of them are sit in a classroom with an MCT facilitating the training, and lots of different options from that perspective. There's LinkedIn Learning courses. I personally have 2 that are certification prep courses. One is for the PL 100, which is the app maker / citizen developer targeted one, and then another one for part of the PL 900, which is the business value of Power Platform certification. It's the fundamentals. But yeah, everybody seems to have their own take on the certifications and how to prepare for them, and everyone takes a test differently. So I like that there are a lot of different options. Don't be afraid to pay for something when it makes sense for you. So like the LinkedIn Learning content is not free. I get paid for it. I get paid when you watch it. I got paid to make it, in full transparency. But I like to think that it has fairly good value and that it's focused on making sure that you know the product well enough that when you're given a question about that product and how to accomplish something, that you can succeed at that.
What happens if you do fail an exam? Do you get a chance to retake it, or do you just have to sort of pay to schedule another round down the road?
It depends. There are oftentimes free second chance vouchers that are available, and they'll let you take the same exam again for no additional cost. You have some limitations that I think are a fairly moving target, where you have to wait X number of days before you can take the test again and so on. But there is no greater study guide than the test. So you sit down to take that test, you're 8 questions in and you realize I'm in way over my head. I'm not going to pass this test. Slow down, read every single question, every single answer in great detail, and go through as many of them as you have time to do, so that when you do go back to take the test, you understand more about the style of the question writing, the different topics that are covered, and so on.
Right, because you're already in it. You might as well get all the exposure you can and use that to prepare for some time in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've got this past, I guess, 12 to 18 months, most of the training that I've been participating in have been absolute beginners. We're talking people who were farmers last week that have decided they want to do technology, or soldiers that have TBI injuries trying to find a new path for their professional career. And so absolute beginners, and it's harder to get jobs when you don't have any experience. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of these credentials that may or may not be certifications, they're based on your learn transcript for these people who are spending their days learning more so that they're better prepared for a job. So as someone who may be interviewing you, to see that, you know what, you may not have a job, but you're spending your days learning to be better at your job when you get one, that impresses me.
What about like timing and time that you have to invest? I mean, like we talked about money and there can be costs for different approaches. Do you have any guidance or estimates on how much prep time someone should be expecting to put into passing an exam?
You know, that really is different from person to person. And so if you've already got some base knowledge and you're just trying to round out the rough edges to make sure you can pass this test when you get there in front of the screen, then it's obviously a lot less time than if it's something that's brand new to you. But if this is something that's important and on your near-term radar, set aside time, schedule time to study. Are you better at spending an hour a day, Monday through Friday, or is it work better for you when it's all quiet at home and everybody's in bed and it's 11 o'clock at night and you spend an hour doing it? Whatever works for you, just schedule it. Because if you schedule it and set aside time like it's any other appointment, you're more likely to do it.
All right. Anything else you wanted to add about certifications and what people might be on the lookout for?
Well, we've got another offering from Microsoft in the way of practice assessments. So this is a Microsoft provided set of questions to help you prepare for the exam. So you get an idea of the types of questions, the format of the questions, kind of the tone and so on of the different questions that are available on the exam. And it's not a complete set of practice assessments, but they're adding more all the time. And so there are several available for Power Platform, several available for Dynamics, as well as Azure and developer technologies, but they're now offered for free. We can include some links for that in the show notes for those practice assessments and other resources. But it doesn't have to be scary to take that certification exam.
Yep. If you're listening, you can do it, right?
Absolutely. When I was growing up, nobody ever told me I could do the things, but I want everyone to know you can do the things. You can do whatever it is you set out to do. And if you're looking for help and guidance, I don't know an MCT who would turn you away.
Yeah, if there's one thing I've seen in this community, whether it's like you said, MCTs or just other real supporters of the community, there are so many people who focus on Dynamics, who focus on Power Platform services, who really want to help out there in the various community spots.
Absolutely, this community is like a family. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to succeed.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for educating me on this. Was there anything else that we missed that you wanted to mention?
There's always more to talk about when it comes to certifications and credentials, but I think that's good for now, and we can add some stuff to our show notes.
All right, very good. Well, I guess we will close the book on another episode of the Biz Apps Classroom here. Julie, always great. I'm really looking forward to our next episode.
That sounds great. Great chatting with you again, Jason.
This has been another episode of the Biz Apps Classroom podcast. It's a collaboration between msdynamicsworld.com and 365.training, and it's all about learning and training in the Microsoft Business Applications ecosystem. And we have a special offer for podcast listeners. You can get an annual subscription to 365.training with a limited time offer of a 10% discount if you visit the link in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach Julie by email at julie@365.training. And you can reach me by email at jason@msdynamicsworld.com. We'll see you next time on the Biz Apps Classroom.